There are no presentations this evening. Moving into the action agenda, approval of the fiscal year 2026 general fund budget, $237,999,925. Ladies and gentlemen, what is your pleasure? Vice Chairman O'Connell?
Approve for discussion.
Okay. Well, we can go into discussion. Yeah.
Yep.
Discussion on what?
Okay. Sorry.
Please.
Yeah, I just, so there's a procedural issue here, right? The board mayor and alderman have passed the budget. And I think our function here is to accept the budget. I think there's no other action that's viable. So we accept the budget as, so if that's the purpose of this process, then.
My understanding of the action agenda is to accept the budget number that the
And
BMA has sent over.
and then because, in our agenda, there are, we have, some pieces saying that the proposed reduction recommendations to meet the Board of Mayor and Alderman budget. It's a 6-line item. I'd like discussion on that, so I'm happy to approve the budget that has been passed by the Board of Mayor and Alderman, but I think that this board should have a robust conversation on what that means for our programs and our staff. So I'm happy to propose, and I do propose that we accept the budget, and that we defer the discussion of this board on how that budget is distributed to a separate conversation.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we have a motion to approve by Vice Chairman O'Connell, second by Committee Member Senecal. All those in favor?
I have one question.
Yep, a discussion.
Is it possible to get any more money, you think, than what we have here? I'll ask the question, right?
It's been approved.
Yeah.
And in speaking with the clerk, there is no mechanism to offer additional dollars within this fiscal year.
Okay, because I'll support it. Obviously, I know we all expressed we would like it to have been higher, but, we'll work with what we have. So, thank you.
Yeah. Any further discussion? I mean, I know we're going to refer continued comment, but yeah, Dr. Parr.
Yeah, I agree with Committee Member O'Connell that I think we need to discuss page 3, that list of reductions there, and to have some more rationale and justification.
So do you want to do that now? I mean, we might as well. If we're going to
Could I just have one question directed to the mayor, and I'm doing with this great respect. You've said that this is the largest appropriation in the school district history. Is there any other department in the city that has got the largest appropriation they've ever had? It sounds like we're the only ones when you make that comment.
No, but when I'm asked specifically about the school district budget, that's an item that I do reference, but I'm not going to reference 18 different departments.
But you do agree that every department in the city got the largest appropriation
they did
received? Because
but when the comment is continued to be made that we are cutting the school district, I feel that it's important to make it clear we did not cut the district.
I just wanted to clarify, because some people read that thinking, well, other departments might not also had the largest appropriation. So the police
But
got the
I
largest.
also just want to clarify that we did not cut
that's
the school
fine.
district, which is why I make that point.
I just want to clarify to the public, because that's your rationale, I respect it, but people understand that every other department got the largest appropriation that they've ever received in the history of our city.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
yeah. Committee Member Potter.
Thank you, Your Honor. With respect, this is a cut. If it's not a cut, why are we reducing our staff by 22 and 8? Now, you know perfectly well that this is detrimental to our students. You know public opinion was lopsidedly in favor of supporting education. You're the chair of this committee, and we're counting on you to stand up for our next generation. But when there was an opportunity to retain more teachers for them, you said no and vetoed it. So we'll find a mayor who values education.
Well, I did not veto anything. If you'll go back and watch the meeting, I voted no when it was a tie. I did not veto anything. To suggest a veto, that would suggest that there was an overwhelming support in which I vetoed it. But no, if you look back and watch that meeting, and knowing the aldermen as well as we do, there was a wide variety of opinion. Some felt that it should be significantly higher. Some felt that it should be very significantly lower. And what I tried to do was strike a balance between the two, which is why you saw 10 people in support of that out of the 14. So I would respectfully disagree with that suggestion. Yeah.
Thank you again, Your Honor. You had the opportunity to say yes. when it was 7-7. So maybe it wasn't technically a veto, but it was in your hands. It was down to just you. And you gave us a cut relative to inflation. And, you chair this committee. I haven't seen you come to this committee with a single priority, a single question, a single idea for a year and a half. But then you go to the aldermen and suggest reducing our staff. Now, I don't know how you can honestly tell me that you value our children when you're working against them.
I think that's extraordinarily disrespectful to suggest that I don't value the children in this district. Extraordinarily disrespectful. Because I unequivocally do. And having a daughter that is going to enter the school district at some point in time, I just think that's horrific to suggest that I don't value the school children in this district. We have a difference of opinion about how much should be expended on that, and the balance, the global look that I have as mayor, balancing a number of different priorities for the city. I found the best compromise that I could with the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, which is why it passed as significantly as it did. But to suggest that I don't care about the children, it could not be further from the truth and is disgraceful to suggest it. Vice Chairman O'Connor.
Thank you, Your Honor. It's no surprise that I'm disappointed by the budget, I guess. But I would just like to, we could talk about that, but I don't see, this is where we've ended up. The fact that we're going to have to use another 8 million plus the 4.5, 12.5, pushing $13 million of rainy day funds this year, just to balance not even balance our budget, so that we only have 22 teachers' positions being lost and 8 district positions being lost. We're going to have larger class sizes, we're going to have other effects, and we're spending down our reserves at that level. So, but I don't want to, I don't know what the purpose in sort of litigating all that here, but I do want to address the issue about when you talk about disrespect. I think I was incensed, actually. I was upset to listen to the comments of aldermen at the Board Mayor and Alderman meeting. The disparaging comments about our district, about this board, about particularly our finances and our finance director by inference, that there was that we were less than open in our finances. There's no every member of the public in this city knows that they can go and find where every single cent is, where it comes from and where it goes to in this district. There's no corner left so it was just factually incorrect. And that's why I made a comment in a public forum place about, spreading disinformation and misinformation. So I would just, we saw an element tonight, we heard of people having different opinions, fine. And as you just pointed out, Your Honor, rightfully so, we have a different opinion about how the right way to fund the school district. But I'm not trying to make a cheap point here. I just think it's important that our aldermen, if they don't know what the truth is, then they should ask. But it is not right for aldermanic leadership and our people in the aldermanic board to be repeating half-truths, untruths, and making things up about the district, because in the best of worlds, we're going to view things differently, and we'd have a robust conversation about how the best way to fund our school district and our needs of our children. But spreading misinformation doesn't help that. So I'm not here to put gasoline on that fire. I just think it's important that there are lines we shouldn't be crossing, and I think truth and honesty and forthrightness, and maybe a little bit of, like we said, trust. Mr. Baines mentioned rightfully, there needs to be trust. I don't think there's anybody in these chambers working, to whatever. But anyway, that's my piece. I hope that we can have a higher standard of debate as we go forward to find the right answer for our school district. Thank you,
Which
Your
is
Honor.
how I've said on this board multiple times that I think we have to be careful in the language that we use, because ultimately the budget comes from here and goes over to the aldermanic side. And I think we have to be really careful if we want to be able to work with each other, the language that we use, because these should be collegial bodies where we can work together, find compromise, and find the best solutions for our city, our district, and our taxpayers as well. Yeah. Committee Member Wan.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I couldn't agree with that last comment more. We need to work together. I do find that that's been difficult over the years because there seems to be some type of hierarchy between the Board of Mayor and Aldermen and the school board, and I think the Board of Mayor and Aldermen seem to think that the school board is less than, and I believe that that's difficult. I do appreciate when the mayor can be the conduit between the two boards. That's been my experience in past, but not so much recently, that there's been a lot of communication from the mayor's office between the two boards, and that I found a little lacking, if I'm being honest. And then I do want to ask Dr. Camille, like, I'm looking at, given the amount of money, the $8 million that we're not receiving from the tax cap compliant budget that we proposed to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, you have in here reduction amounts. And I just wonder if you could go through each one of those. Like, I'm not sure $400,000 in facilities, what that is, or $133,000 in supplies, what does that cover? Contracted service, $1,300,000. Could you give us more detail on each of these? And I do have a follow-up question on the last item.
Your recommendations now, we're still discussing whether we accept the budget, right?
The discussion was on the motion to accept the budget.
So that's what we should be talking about as opposed to the cuts.
Well, I think the purpose of
how do
opening
we
it up
know?
to the discussion on
Yeah.
the budget was to discuss the cuts and pass the budget.
I got to know what's being cut here before I agree. I'm trying to get more detail, Bob.
So going into discussion now about the superintendent's recommendations?
Correct.
Voting on the budget.
Well, I think the purpose of the Vice Chairman's motion was for us to discuss the cuts so that we can pass the
That's fine.
budget.
I just wanted to question.
Sorry, Your Honor, could I just clarify? I was suggesting that we take the vote on accepting the automatic vote, or the automatic, the budget, doing that separate from, I'm not ready.
When would you want to have the conversation about?
At the time, we have more information than what I've got right here in front of me is about 15 words on 6 lines. I have no, like to Committeewoman Wan's question, I have no idea. I'd like to know, you know, what is on there and how we got there. I'd like to separate them because I heard comments being made about the additional money that was found and voted on by 10 aldermen, that meant that certain things weren't happening, it wouldn't happen. I heard that and it clanged in my ear to hear because there was no discussion with the Board of School Committee about what would and would not be cut. This board never said that it wasn't going to close a school or open 2. We didn't talk about whether we would eliminate sports in middle school or whether we would bring them up. We didn't talk about that. That's the role of this board. But there were things said that now that we've reached some sort of compromise, as though there had been a discussion between the Board of School Committee, who is the only body that decides how the budget is spent. Nobody else. This board decides that. And we have not decided that. So I want to separate the two things because it's all very well to say the words, we have reached a compromise. I don't know who we've reached a compromise with because there are 2 halves to that conversation, and one of them is, actually, there's not even 2 halves. There's one body, legislatively, that is, by charter, that decides what happens with the budget. The aldermen give us an amount of money. Discretion as to how it gets spent resides here.
Yeah,
I just know that,
so
just to
Dr.
finish,
Camille,
I don't have the information before me tonight to have that conversation because I've got 6 lines with money after them.
So where would be the most, should it go back through finance? We approve the number and it goes through finance with recommendations to the board on?
No, so what we did is we presented our recommendations at one of the last meetings. We gave a set of recommendations and the impacts of each. Then it went over to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. We know what the final budget is coming out of the BMA. We went back, we looked at the recommendations we had made in the previous meeting. We adjusted We listened to the feedback that we heard from this board during that last review of our recommendations. We heard loud and clear. There was a wish to continue with expansion of athletics. We heard there was a wish not to remove any part of the transportation recommendations we made. We heard that there was concerns of class size, particularly at the elementary level. So we went back and we went through all of the recommendations we made previously and adjusted where we needed to adjust. I have comments for tonight. Whenever we're ready for them, I can walk us through, and then I've got all of our notes from the last meeting with the recommendations. So what needs to happen next is, I believe the budget needs to be voted on at some point, and then my recommendations can come either
And we
before or
would
after that.
accept or disapprove of your recommendations?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, so,
Can we talk about the budget before we vote on the budget? I'm not going to ask about that information. I have a couple of observations. I apologize. How come we didn't have a joint meeting, both boards, that I mentioned at the last meeting? You thought it was a good idea. Why was that? And you have the authority to do that.
yeah, well, I mean, there was a timing crunch. We wanted to get through as quickly as possible as we had talked with the superintendent about the importance of passing a number as quickly as we could to give certainty. I mean, candidly, I don't think it would have changed the outcome.
No, it might not have, but I think process is more important than being fast. I think in the future, we need to have more joint meetings. I find it offensive, the only two of us in this room that know what this is like to go through this, the mayor and me. But I find it offensive, and I did back, because some of the same criticisms are there, that people criticize this board unjustly, like not being transparent. I don't think there's anybody in this district that is more transparent than Karen DeFrancis. No one. And I've dealt with a lot of finance people during my time as mayor, as a principal, and different roles that I've had now in the school board. We are as transparent as we possibly can be. The mayor is the only person, and we talked about this too, the mayor is chairman of our board, whether you like it or not. There was a time when mayors didn't even come to school board meetings. Didn't even come. That's when we were a school department. They didn't even come. So, but the mayors started to come, and I won't go through the history, and then when mayors started to come, they didn't chair the board. Bob Shaw was the first one to chair the board. You're in a unique role when people make outrageous statements like that, or disparage the school district, that we don't know how to teach, we don't know how to do this, we don't know how to do that. You have witnessed to our meetings the unbelievable achievements that our students have, that we recognize at our meeting. I would encourage you to use those experiences that you're having as a mayor to dispute these people that basically condemn the work of our school district. It's just wrong. And I don't dispute that you're not caring for kids. I've seen you with kids. You care a lot about kids, and you have a baby, and you want the best for that baby when that baby goes to the school district. I just don't get this animus, and we've talked about this privately, that exists towards our public schools. I just don't understand it. Anyone who goes into our public schools comes out amazed at what's going on. I remember bringing Arthur Sullivan when we were trying to get Manchester Proud organized. He said, I want to go visit all the schools. He was shocked at how great the schools were. We went to Central High School, we went to Memorial, we went to West, we went to MST, we flew in a helicopter with Dr. Arthur's helicopter, went to visit the Met School down in Rhode Island. He was shocked because the perception, if you listen to this rhetoric, is that we're failing. We're not a failing school district. This school district is now moving in the right direction. I would hope you would use that position to counteract what some of these people are saying. And I'm going to caution, end by this. Sean, what did you say? I had a riveting comment about funds. I am so, my son said to me the other day, Dad, stop getting stressed about stuff. You've done enough of that. I am really stressed about this use of one-time funds. You know, Karen and I meet every month to go over the agenda. We're going to have either $1 or $2 million over expenses in special education. Could be $2 million that we might have to tap that rainy day fund. Karen, how much did we tap last year out of that?
I don't have last year's number, but we probably a couple of million.
So we took a couple of million last year, a couple of million this year. We're going to take a couple of million next. Eventually, it's going to be gone. It's going to be gone. And the same thing, we should be, I don't want to, and I won't vote to have this happen. The things that she's recommending are not even near what she should or could be recommending based upon the use of these one-time funds. There would have been pink slips, layoffs, there would have been all kinds of really bad things happen. But we're taking 5 million this year? 4.5. We took 9 million last year. What are we going to do on the next budget? Another 5 million? Another 5 million? Another 5 million? It's gone. And then what are the people going to do? What's the next mayor going to be doing? What's the next school board going to be faced with? Next board of mayor and aldermen. This is scary, ladies and gentlemen. And if you don't think it is, go in and sit down with Karen and get the history of what we're doing with those funds. So obviously I'm going to vote to approve this budget, but this is not a budget that we should be dealing with. It doesn't meet the basic cost of living. Everything goes up. Yes, we have to compromise. This is not a compromise. This is a disservice to not only the present, but the future, but that other challenges will have to be made by the mayor and all elected officials. So we'll vote for it. We're going to hear the recommendations, but next year is going to be worse. The next year after that is going to be worse. Next year after that, your funds are going to be gone. So we need to think about that. Thank you, Your Honor.
Committee Member Spills.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of comments. First, I guess I want to say that, you know, I don't like this budget. It undercuts the progress that we're making. But more than that, I think I find myself frustrated that this was voted on in an aldermanic meeting by suspending the rules. It wasn't on the agenda.
That's not accurate.
It was not on the agenda.
Yes, it was. As a process matter for the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, the budget is passed in the Finance Committee, and then it comes up. We tabled all remaining items of the budget and did not table the school district budget.
Did a suspension of the rules?
Suspension of the rules.
I believe there was a vote on the suspension of the rules.
No, we voted to suspend the rules on the contracts. That's not accurate.
Point of order. I thought you all suspended the rules to not have to lay over for 2 weeks.
No. It laid over. It laid over at the last meeting.
Regardless, there was very little communication with this board about when it was being voted on by the aldermen. So that we did not have the voice that we could have had. The public did not have the voice that they could have had at that meeting. We talk about trust and we talk about wanting to work collegially. These sorts of things need to be communicated to this board if that's going to happen. I also don't appreciate, and I agree with my colleagues, the disparaging remarks that come out of the BMA about this board and about our district. We are often lectured about watching what we say. I do not see that happening at the BOMA meetings. And I take real issue with that. We are being told to hold our tongues, yet they are allowed to be free and loose. I understand they have their rules, but when you watch the meetings, the difference is very clear. We need a leader And I am incredibly disappointed. I had some hope for you, like I would for anybody coming into this position new, and now I don't. And I really do not have trust between you and this board, or between our board and the BOMA. This budget is appalling. It doesn't even meet cost of living standards. How are we to attract the best and the brightest if we can't even give them a cost of living adjustment? We can't guarantee that. Now, I know with contracts, certain things are guaranteed, but beyond that, where does it end? When is enough enough? We have students, we have parents who rely on us to make these decisions, to make good decisions. You're a parent now. You have a young daughter who was born premature, and I hope that she does not have any sort of medical complications or issues that come with that. But as a parent who has a child who has had issues, who was born with medical complications, it is incredibly scary to think about what we are cutting back from in the school district and what my child will be going into in a few years, because these things do not resolve themselves overnight. It takes years, sometimes decades, to fix them. The use of one-time funds is incredibly irresponsible. In my own personal budget, I keep more than 10% in my savings, if I can. Because let's be real, in this economy, it gets real tight. We have $23 million. We're going to take out another 4.5. That's 20%. That's incredibly irresponsible, and especially in this climate where we have people coming at us from all angles threatening our federal funding. Our federal funding is about what we have in the trust. If we lose that money, or if we don't have enough to fix that up, where do we go? We're bankrupt. The budget is what it is. Wherever we discuss the cuts and how we do it, I am going to advocate and suggest that we try to reduce the use of expendable trust funds as much as possible, because it does make me incredibly nervous that we are going to try to spend $4.5 million, because that's fiscally responsible. We need to be responsible and reduce that as much as we can to keep our savings intact. Thank you.
A point of order, if I could, just for clarity. I just want to make sure we're talking about, I'm sorry, Committeewoman O'Neill. I just want to make clear. So we were using $4.5 million of one-time funds going into this budget. That was if we had gotten the tax cap compliant budget that we asked for. We're not getting this. I'm reading in the 6th-line item that I get here, additional use of expendable trust funds, $3,843,612. So that tells me that we're going to be spending $8.343612 in one-time funds.
Correct. So the 4.5 is what is in the current budget.
Right.
What's within our recommendation, I did not include that when Mr. Baines asked, was because it's not approved yet from the board, what that final number will be for one-time use. Right now, we've got it calculated at just over 3.8.
Right. So just to be clear, the budget as proposed right now is using $8.3 million of one-time funds this year. We spent $9 million of one-time funds last year. So it isn't that it's going down at $4 or $5 million a year, it's going down at $8 and $9 million per year.
These are rainy day funds, by the way.
Rainy day funds. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure we were not misleading the public or ourselves.
Terrible choice.
Committeemember Turner.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Your Honor. I was in attendance for the April 15th BMA. I spoke my 3 minutes, and then I spoke again on May 6th. I showed up in a hoodie with a baseball cap on because, like some of my fellow committee members, I wasn't sure until the last minute that that was actually going to be up for a vote, so I came and I spoke my 3 minutes. I do feel frustrated, as I do hear some of my colleagues. What seems as though a lot of the comments fell on deaf ears in terms of on 415 when 60 people, 59 or 60 people came out and spoke in favor of a better budget. And I don't think that a $1.5 million increase from your proposed budget is a better budget for the district. I applaud, I see Alderman Fajardo here. I applaud her no vote, the courage to say no, 1.5 million. She was not part of the 10. She was part of the 7-7, trying to give us $2 million. But I agree with my fellow committee members that, yes, it is the most the school district has ever gotten, but every year is always the most that the school district has ever gotten. That's how inflation works. So I do applaud the aldermen that did try. I did send emails both to you and many of the aldermen with what I thought was a fair breakdown, possibly from the 9.5 million reduction to possibly a $5 million, $4.5 million reduction. So I do want to praise you, Mayor. I was here on the 6th of May, and I applaud you for trying to correct conversations about surplus. I believe I heard you correctly reminding the public that we do not sit on a surplus, so I appreciated that. I also appreciated you bringing to the attention that we did dip into $9 million worth of our trust fund last year. So I just wanted to acknowledge you righting the ship and correcting facts. And I also, for what it's worth, do appreciate you trying to expedite a vote on the budget, because it is imperative for our district to get the hiring process underway as soon as possible. And I saw some movement on the board of mayor and aldermen trying to possibly present a different budget later on. So I applaud you trying to move that along on behalf of our district. So I was there, I did listen, I did pay attention. I do feel frustrated that the 60 people that came to spoke in April in favor of a better budget probably feel as frustrated as I am that the budget did not do us very, very good in terms of we still received an $8 million cut. I also feel frustrated that, I represent my ward, but everyone here represents our ward, and the voters didn't pull our names out of a hat and say this might be a good pick. They actually checked our names because they know what we stand for public education. So when we unanimously pass a budget from this body, and I didn't hear a no vote from the chair of this board, and so I believe you were chalked up as a yes. I do feel frustrated that I leave this room in February feeling hopeful that we have a unanimous vote going forward. I've heard the words iterative process. I'm not sure I understand what that means anymore, because we still came out with an $8 million reduction. So with that, I wanted to talk to the superintendent. I feel a little confused tonight, only because when we met last, and my anger wasn't with you, but it was directed at you. When we looked at your recommendations for the cut, and you felt my frustration and emotion over what was your proposal for us dealing with a $9.5 million reduction, we're sitting tonight with an $8 million reduction. So it's really not far from where we were. And so I felt hopeful when we left that we would meet again and have maybe $5 million brought up from that $9.5 million reduction. But we're sitting with an $8 million reduction. So I listened to you listened to the feedback from us at our last meeting, and then presented page 3 in here. And I guess I echo the sentiments, like, it's hard to discern from page 3, so for example, let me land the plane here. If I were faced tonight with the choice of $90,000 of pausing our growth of middle school athletics, or a reduction in staff, let's say, of middle school coaches, if I'm faced with an apples to apples decision tonight on how to spend $90,000, in my conscience, I would have to say, let's pause on athletics and not get rid of our coaches. So there's now this like nitty gritty that I feel like we need to like sift through as a board. And I don't want to micromanage you by any means, but I feel like my feedback's different tonight than it was 2 weeks ago, looking at like the hope that I had 2 weeks or a month ago. I could not have dreamed that we were going to end up with this budget. So at that point, I was like, well, yeah, I'm passionate about these athletics. But tonight, I'm passionate more about our line item with school-based positions because I really don't want to see any of those collapse. So I will suspend any more of my comments. But I feel a little confused tonight because I'm not really sure what my role is tonight. I don't believe you came prepared to get into the nuances of what page 3 means.
No, we're good. We can talk about it.
Okay, so I guess I'll start with, like, do you want to go line by line and tell us what maybe those look like, or is
Well,
that?
I'm waiting for that time. I've
Okay.
been waiting for this discussion to
Yeah,
kind of outline when I'm going to give those
Okay.
pieces of info.
Point of order, are we going to vote on the actual approval of the funds and then
what
go
we're
through that?
waiting.
So I'd like to call the question.
Yeah, okay, that's fine by me.
I'll second.
Okay, so, the question is approving the budget.
So that was an important question to me.